Welcome back to Galaxy Recaps. Today we'll be diving into the action thriller franchise, titled The Expendables. This includes the films, The Expendables Part 2, The Expendables 3, and finally The Expendables 4. Enjoy the recap. The film kicks off with the Expendables, a deadly and elite squad, storming the coast of Somalia and the Gulf of Aden. Their mission: take down local pirates who have been holding hostages captive for 3 months. Leading the high-octane team is Barney Ross, a former SAS trooper, alongside the knife-wielding R.O. Lee Christmas, martial arts master Yin Yang, sharpshooter Gunnar Jensen, and heavy weapons expert Hale Caesar. As the pirate chief prepares to execute a hostage, his body lights up with red laser dots from all angles. His men stand tense, rifles raised, sensing the danger. Barney steps in as the negotiator, tossing down a bag filled with $3 million, urging the pirate to let the hostages go. But greed blinds the pirate chief. He demands an extra $2 million. Barney tries to reason with him, but the standoff triggers Gunner's short fuse. Despite Barney's attempts to keep him in check, Gunner fires, killing the pirate chief and igniting a chaotic shootout. Smoke grenades explode, plunging the area into darkness as the Expendables slip on their night vision goggles. Rappelling down ropes, they close in to free the captives. But just as victory seems near, a pirate fires up a generator, cutting through the darkness. Still holding the upper hand, Barney offers the pirates one last chance to surrender. They refuse, and pay the ultimate price as Barney guns them down. As the team begins freeing the hostages, Gunner's erratic nature resurfaces. He threatens to hang a pirate, prompting Barney to step in. When words fail, Yin Yang intervenes and the situation escalates into a physical confrontation. Barney is forced to pull his gun on Gunner, commanding him to stand down. With Gunner's mental instability becoming a liability, Barney makes the hard call. Gunner is out of the team. Later, Lee Christmas faces his own troubles, discovering that his partner Lacey has moved on without him. Meanwhile, Barney visits Tool, the Expendables' go-to for weapons and recruitment. As Tool finishes Barney's back tattoo, Lee joins them, leading to a friendly dart game. Shockingly, Lee loses, a rare moment for someone undefeated in the game, hinting that something may be off. Across the ocean on Valena Island, General Garza's regime tightens its grip. A truck packed with accused traitors arrives at the palace. Garza, cold and unyielding, accuses them of theft despite their desperate pleas. Without warning, a well-dressed man, James Monroe, pulls the trigger, killing one of the prisoners. Monroe, Garza's shadowy advisor, pressures him to execute the rest to instill fear. Reluctantly, Garza complies. Back in the States, Barney crosses paths with a mysterious client known as Mr. Church. There he encounters Trench, an old rival and fellow mercenary. Church lays out a dangerous mission: take down General Garza, the tyrant controlling Valena. Trench, tied up with his own missions, passes the job to Barney, hinting that others have already turned it down. Sensing the risk, Barney negotiates hard $5 million half up front and the rest secured in an offshore account. Church agrees but leaves Barney with a stark warning. Failure isn't an option. Back at their hideout, Barney studies a map of Valena, preparing for the mission ahead. Gunner interrupts, pleading for another chance to stay on the team. He swears he's still capable, but Barney stands firm, pointing out Gunner's drug problem. Frustrated, Gunner storms off with a thinly veiled threat, one Barney simply brushes off. That night, Barney briefs the team on the Valena mission. Soon, they touch down on the island's stunning coastline. Barney and Lee secure their massive plane at the port, bluffing their way past guards by posing as wildlife researchers transporting injured animals. Their fake passports pass the test. Unbeknownst to them, Gunner has secretly stowed away on the plane and slips off unnoticed. Meanwhile, Barney and Lee stay low as Garza's army rolls in. Discreetly, Lee films the soldiers' brutal crackdown on the locals. Later, at a local hangout, they rendezvous with Church's contact, Sandra. As she drives them around, Sandra reminisces about Valena's beauty before Garza's corrupt reign, blaming a mysterious American for turning the island into a nightmare. Despite her parents' deaths and the ongoing turmoil, she clings to hope for a better future. Intrigued, Barney asks Sandra to drive closer to the palace for a better look. Though hesitant, she agrees. Lee hops out of the truck, eager to scope things from a different angle, while Sandra and Barney stay behind. As they inch closer to the palace, Barney's instincts flare. He confronts Sandra, suspecting she might be setting them up. Sandra denies it, insisting her only goal is to help Valena's suffering people. Barney warns her Valena is a lost cause. Their conversation is abruptly cut short by a truck full of Garza's soldiers. One soldier roughly grabs Sandra, warning that even the general's daughter isn't immune to punishment. As he drags her toward the vehicle, Lee swiftly steps in, turning the tables. His distraction gives Barney the opening he needs to take down the other soldiers. Lee doesn't stop there. He unleashes a barrage of combat skills, taking down enemies one by one. The soldier holding Sandra becomes his next target while Barney eliminates the last of the threats, narrowly avoiding clipping Lee with a bullet. Lee shoots Barney a sharp glare for the close call. Without hesitation, they race back to the truck and speed off, but Monroe and his men catch wind of the skirmish and descend upon the port. At the docks, Barney wastes no time. He orders Lee to get Sandra on the plane and stay hidden while he handles Monroe's crew. Lee opens the plane door, urging Sandra to board, but she refuses. Her place is in Vienna, she insists, and she won't abandon her people. Lee tries to persuade her, but Sandra's mind is made up. Reluctantly, Lee lets her go and fires up the engines. Garza's guards quickly position themselves, aiming their guns at the plane. Just in time, Barney arrives, gunning down the soldiers before they can fire. Sandra slips away in her truck as Monroe storms past, fixated on stopping Barney. Lee expertly maneuvers the plane down the runway, but Barney is still on the ground. As the plane begins to lift off, Barney sprints toward it, leaping off the dock just as Monroe's men unleash a hail of bullets. Clinging to the aircraft, Barney hauls himself aboard, barely escaping the gunfire. Once inside, Lee delivers the news. Sandra stayed behind. It wasn't part of the plan, but Barney accepts it without complaint. Without missing a beat, he takes the controls, steering the plane back toward the port. As the port comes into view, Lee prepares for action. The moment they're in range, he unleashes a hail of bullets from the plane, tearing into Monroe and his men. Barney follows up by dousing the area with what appears to be gasoline. Before Monroe's crew can react, Lee pulls the trigger, igniting a massive explosion. Flames engulf the port, and Monroe barely escapes the inferno, diving into the water alongside his closest men. The rest aren't as lucky, caught in the catastrophic blast. Night falls over the palace, and tension flares between Monroe and Garza. The source of friction, Sandra, Garza's daughter, had aided Barney and Lee despite the overwhelming odds. 4 elite soldiers were wiped out, and the team vanished without a trace. Monroe doesn't mince words, warning Garza that even his daughter won't be spared if she crosses him again. As Garza storms out, a new player steps into the room, Gunner. Monroe strikes a deal, offering Gunner $100,000 to hunt down Barney and his crew. Later that night, Barney uncovers unsettling truths. Their mysterious employer, Mr. Church, is a front for the CIA. The mission? Take down Monroe, a former CIA operative gone rogue. Monroe's greed led him to ally with Garza, monopolizing the island's drug trade while terrorizing the locals. With the full picture in hand, Barney briefs Lee and Young. Without hesitation, they agree the job is off. But the decision weighs on Barney. Sandra's courage and unwavering resolve for Vienna replay in his mind, leaving him restless. Seeking clarity, he turns to Toole. Instead of a straight answer, Toole recounts a haunting story from the Bosnian War. He reveals deep-seated guilt over failing to save a woman's life, a scar that never healed. His message is clear: women will sacrifice everything, even their lives, to protect the people they love. Meanwhile, Sandra falls into Monroe's clutches. His men drag her in for questioning, demanding to know the Americans' true purpose on the island. Garza intervenes, berating Sandra, but she stands defiant, daring him to kill her. To her, he's already destroyed everything worth saving. Monroe's men escalate their tactics, resorting to waterboarding in an attempt to break Sandra. But she doesn't yield. Frustrated, Monroe decides to hold her hostage instead. The next day, Barney makes his decision. He's going back to Vienna to save Sandra. Lee pushes back, sparking a heated exchange. Young, with unwavering determination, insists on joining despite Barney's reluctance. As they journey back, Young vents his frustrations. He jokes about being underpaid and overworked, lamenting how fighting larger opponents leaves him battered and bruised. Their mission takes a dangerous turn when they're ambushed at a checkpoint by Gunner and Monroe's men. Luckily, Barney and Young are in a bulletproof car. Gunfire erupts, escalating into a high-speed chase. Barney expertly weaves through the chaos, while Young hangs out of the vehicle, returning fire. The chase barrels into an abandoned warehouse, the perfect arena for a second showdown between Young and Gunner. Using the low ceilings to his advantage, Young strikes relentlessly, causing Gunner to repeatedly slam his head against the beams. But Yang's stamina starts to wane. Gunner seizes the moment, hoisting him up for a crushing blow. Before Gunner can finish him, Barney intervenes, firing a shot that strikes just above Gunner's heart. Gunner collapses, gasping for breath. Barney crouches beside him, demanding answers. Gunner musters his last bit of strength, whispering something into Barney's ear before slipping into unconsciousness. After the brutal showdown, Barney and Young return to the plane where the rest of the Expendables, Lee included, await them. Though the team may not fully agree with Barney's decision, loyalty trumps doubt. He's still their brother in arms. Later that day, the squad takes off for Vienna, their massive plane soaring across the sky. En route, Barney opens up to Lee, Gunner, before going down. Revealed crucial intel. the blueprints of Garza's palace. With this knowledge in hand, the Expendables mobilize, descending on Velena with precision and speed. Meanwhile, tensions explode at the palace. Garza confronts Monroe, boldly severing their alliance. He accuses Monroe of hiring the Expendables to rein him in, and when that failed, turning his rage toward Sandra, torturing her for leverage. Furious, Garza issues a final demand: return his daughter or die. As this confrontation escalates, the Expendables infiltrate the palace. Li Yang, Caesar, and Tool swiftly plant explosives throughout the compound, targeting drug caches and key facilities. Elsewhere, Sandra, despite being bound, fights off two of Monroe's men, refusing to go down quietly. Just as they overpower her, Barney crashes in, wielding Gunner's blade. With brutal efficiency, he dispatches the guards and frees Sandra, calming her as they prepare to escape. But the path to freedom is blocked. Monroe's men corner them, and in the ensuing firefight, Sandra is dragged away while Barney is left in the clutches of a soldier, choking him into submission. Monroe's right-hand man steps in, beating Barney ruthlessly, demanding to know how many Expendables have breached the palace. Barney remains silent. As things grow grim, the rest of the Expendables burst in, launching a full-scale rescue. Yang and Lee coordinate their attacks, taking down Monroe's top enforcer with seamless precision. Barney, bruised and bleeding, fights off his torturer with raw skill and lethal force. Caesar joins the fray, cutting down Monroe's men with a relentless barrage from his devastating arsenal. The sheer firepower sends waves of panic through Monroe's remaining forces, forcing them to scatter. When the palace's main gates swing open, the Expendables face down a wall of Garza's soldiers. Outnumbered and temporarily retreating, Garza seizes the moment, calling for their surrender. But Garza's speech takes an unexpected turn. Addressing his soldiers and the townspeople, he admits his blindness and greed, vowing to purge Velena of Monroe and his men. His words inspire hope, but it's short-lived. From the shadows, Monroe coldly fires, cutting Garza down mid-sentence. Without hesitation, he grabs Sandra and makes his escape, heading toward a waiting helicopter with his remaining henchmen. Garza's fall ignites chaos. His soldiers, blinded by rage, unleash a torrent of bullets at the Expendables. As the firefight rages, Barney's team urges him to detonate the explosives and bring the palace down. But Barney holds firm, not until Sandra is safe. As soon as Lee confirms Sandra's safe exit, Barney wastes no time. He triggers the explosives, leveling the palace in a fiery cascade that halts the enemy assault. Emerging from the rubble, the Expendables press forward, overpowering the remaining soldiers with unmatched precision and firepower. But Barney isn't done. Determined to end it for good, he races after Monroe and his right-hand man. Tool and Lee dive into the fray, engulfing Monroe's top enforcer in flames, taking him down in spectacular fashion. Meanwhile, Barney and Caesar unleash a barrage of firepower, demolishing Monroe's escape helicopter before it can take off. Trapped and desperate, Monroe grabs Sandra, using her as a human shield. His voice wavers as he tries to draw parallels between himself and Barney. Two mercenaries, hollow and driven by greed. He can't understand why Barney is so relentless in pursuing him. But Barney's response is cold and unwavering. It was never about you. It was about saving her. Without hesitation, Barney draws his gun and fires, striking Monroe with relentless precision. The final blow comes from Lee, who steps in and buries a blade into Monroe's chest, ending the warlord's reign once and for all. As the sun rises over Velena, Barney hands the mission's payment to Sandra, trusting her to lead the charge in rebuilding and restoring her home to its former glory. Their farewell is brief but heartfelt, marked by mutual respect. Back at Tool's lounge, the Expendables gather to celebrate their hard-fought victory. The moment grows even more meaningful as Gunner, battered but alive, returns. Humbled and repentant, he announces his decision to seek therapy and make amends. The celebration culminates with Lee reciting a touching poem in honor of Tool. And with a sly grin, he finishes by hurling a knife straight into the center of the board, perfectly landing his mark. Time leaps forward and we find ourselves in the rugged landscapes of Nepal. In a grim room, a man sits bound to a chair, his face hidden beneath a bag. Outside, the calm cityscape shatters as 4 military-style tanks roar onto the scene. The Expendables are back and they're coming in hot. Leading the charge is Barney Ross, with the entire crew in tow, including the now reformed Gunner. Their assault is relentless, reversing their armored vehicle to crush any opposition in their path. Rocket launchers blast through enemy defenses as the team storms the stronghold in an adrenaline-fueled rampage. Inside, Lee's knack for creative combat shines as he wields 2 frying pans, effortlessly taking down his attackers. Amid the chaos, the Expendables locate their target, Dr. Joe, held captive by a terrorist group. But there's a twist. They also discover Trench, tied up and grumbling after his own failed rescue attempt for Dr. Joe. armed with Caesar's gun. Trench joins the crew as they fight their way to the rooftop. There, they overwhelm the remaining guards and make a daring escape via zipline descending into the dense forest below. Upon landing, Barney and Lee find themselves surrounded once more. Without missing a beat, Barney forms his fingers into the shape of a gun, signaling an ambush. In an instant, sniper fire rains down from the tree line, taking out the enemy. The precision shots reveal their hidden ally, Billy, a new recruit to the Expendables. Their escape continues downriver as they commandeer boats pursued by relentless enemies. Billy proves his worth, picking off their pursuers one by one. Just as it seems the chase won't end, their getaway plane swoops in, skimming across the water. Climbing aboard, the team is greeted by a new threat, a group of assassins with weapons drawn. Barney fires the first shot, missing, but his follow-up hits true, eliminating 3 enemies in quick succession. The team pulls away, leaving the chaos of Nepal behind. With the mission complete, Yang departs to escort Dr. Joe back to China. Back in New Orleans, Billy confides in Barney. He's planning to retire at the end of the month, hoping to settle down with his partner, Sophia. Not long after, Barney is approached by CIA operative Mr. Church. Still bitter about the destruction of his Vienna operation, Church insists that the Expendables owe him. He offers Barney a grim choice: either repay the favor or face imprisonment, or worse. With little room to negotiate, Barney accepts the job. The mission: recover an item from a crashed plane in Albania. Church also insists on adding a technical expert, Maggie Chan, to the team. Skeptical of her involvement, Barney warns Maggie that this isn't her kind of mission, but the decision isn't his to make. The next day, the Expendables touch down in the remote Albanian wilderness. Navigating the dense forest, they locate the wreckage of the downed aircraft. As they explore, a hidden bomb is triggered, leaving them with only 60 seconds to escape. Panic sets in, but Maggie steps up, defusing the bomb with seconds to spare. With the item secured, the team prepares to leave, but victory is short-lived. Before they can retreat, they are ambushed by the SS, a ruthless terrorist group led by the arms dealer Jean Villain. In a cold and calculated move, Villain captures Billy, demanding the recovered item in exchange for his life. Faced with the grim reality, Barney orders his team to drop their weapons, ready to hand over the item to Villain. But Villain isn't just after the item. He wants to send a message. With cold arrogance, he forces the Expendables to the ground, demanding they bow in submission. A helicopter approaches as Barney complies, but Villain's cruelty knows no bounds. In a flash, he delivers a brutal roundhouse kick, driving a knife straight into Billy's chest. As the helicopter lifts off, Barney rushes to Billy's side. With his final breath, Billy pleads with Barney to retrieve a note from his pocket. A heavy silence falls over the group as Barney walks over to Maggie. Grimly, he demands the truth about the stolen item. Maggie reveals the chilling secret. The device contains the location of 5 tons of weapons-grade plutonium, abandoned in a Soviet mine after the Cold War. In the heart of the Albanian wilderness, the Expendables gather to honor their fallen brother. Together, they dig a makeshift grave for Billy. Barney unfolds the note, a heartfelt letter written to his beloved Sophia. As Barney reads aloud, Billy's words paint a picture of camaraderie, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond among the Expendables. A vow is made: Villain will pay with his life. Tracking Villain's movements using a signal from a device Maggie planted, the team sets course for the abandoned mine. Along the way, Barney fields a call from Church, but revenge burns hotter than duty, and Barney coldly cuts him off. This mission is no longer about orders, it's personal. Maggie pieces together Villain's sinister plan. The plutonium isn't for ideological gain. He plans to auction it to the highest bidder, handing unprecedented power to the world's most dangerous criminals. The trail leads the Expendables to Bulgaria, where the signal from the stolen computer grows stronger. Deep inside the mine, the team uncovers a heartbreaking scene: countless captives forced into grueling labor, extracting the deadly plutonium under the threat of death. Villain, ruthless as ever, orders his second-in-command to accelerate production. Buyers are circling, and he wants the shipment ready in 3 days. Arriving in Bulgaria, Barney and Lee scout the area, stopping at a local bar where they cross paths with a member of Villain's SS. Using forceful persuasion, they extract vital information, pinpointing the location of the mine. Their search leads them to an abandoned Russian military base, where they decide to rest for the night. Morning breaks, and as the team strategizes, Caesar suddenly signals them to duck. Gunfire erupts from all sides, shredding the building around them. Barney dashes outside, calmly taking down assailants in his signature style. Inside, Lee scrambles to secure a vehicle, but plans shift when Barney spots a looming tank approaching fast. The tank opens fire, tearing through the base. With ammunition running dangerously low, the Expendables brace for the worst. Then, out of nowhere, a lone figure enters the battlefield, cutting through the enemy with lethal precision. The mysterious savior dismantles the tank with ease, eliminating the last threat. As the smoke clears, he steps forward. It's Booker, an old friend of Barney's. Booker offers crucial advice. There's a nearby village resisting Villain's rule. Barney should seek their aid. Not long after, Lee returns with a vehicle packed with weapons. Armed and ready, the team sets off toward the village, determined to put an end to Villain's reign of terror. The Expendables arrive at the village, only to be met with suspicion and resistance. The villagers, all women, hesitate to trust them. However, Barney and his team manage to convince them of their shared goal to defeat the SS and liberate the village from Villain's grip. Meanwhile, Villain and Hector successfully extract a large cache of plutonium, preparing it for transport. As the SS returns to the village in search of more slaves, the Expendables launch their attack. Disguised as a local priest, Lee confuses the SS guards before striking with lightning-fast moves, taking them down with precision. Maggie, Barney, and Gunnar join the fight, swiftly eliminating the remaining enemies. With the village secured, the team braces for their final confrontation with Villain and his heavily armed forces. Using fresh intel on Villain's location, the Expendables scout the perimeter of the mine. Observing the large concentration of guards and weapons, wasting no time, they board their plane and head straight for the site. At the mine, Villain orders all the enslaved workers to gather in one spot, preparing to execute them. As the guards line up the workers, Barney strikes first, blowing up a bridge packed with enemy reinforcements. The explosion sends chaos through the compound. In a daring move, Barney deliberately crashes the plane into the mine, skidding to a halt in a rough landing. The Expendables pour out, engaging the guards and rescuing the miners just moments before their execution. However, Villain and Hector manage to escape, fleeing with the plutonium. As they retreat, Villain remotely detonates explosives planted throughout the mine. The structure begins collapsing, trapping Barney, his team, and the villagers deep underground. With no way out and oxygen running low, hope seems fleeting, until the sound of drilling breaks through the walls. A machine punches through and Trench emerges with a grin. Barney is visibly relieved, embracing his old friend. The villagers reunite and thank Barney and his team for saving their lives. Mr. Church, having joined Trench, steps forward, ready to finish the job. The combined forces of the Expendables, Trench, and Church track Villain to a nearby airport as he prepares to flee the country with the remaining plutonium. As the arms dealer and his mercenaries gear up for departure, Booker reappears, joining Barney for the final showdown. A fierce battle erupts across the tarmac, forcing Villain's convoy to a halt. In the commotion, one of the trucks carrying the plutonium spills its load, sending radioactive containers scattering. The remaining SS fighters try to hold their ground, buying time for at least 2 trucks to escape. Panic spreads across the airport as civilians and workers flee, but the Expendables press forward. Barney, Trench, and Church unleash a storm of gunfire, cutting down the enemy one by one. Booker covers their flank, preventing an ambush and ensuring the team keeps advancing. With the rest of the team joining the fray, the fight turns into an all-out massacre. As the dust settles, Villain attempts to escape in the chaos. Barney breaks away from the firefight, determined to confront him one-on-one. Meanwhile, Booker and Trench continue mowing down the remaining SS forces, securing the airport in a relentless assault. As the last of the plutonium is loaded onto the plane, Villain gives the order to start the engines. Meanwhile, Church hijacks a nearby car, drawing inspiration from every action movie cliché as he races across the airstrip, mowing down enemies without hesitation. At this point, it feels like they've single-handedly taken down an entire army, and they're not slowing down. Across the tarmac, the remaining SS fighters scramble to board a chopper to escape, but Lee isn't far behind. After cutting down the guards standing between him and revenge, Lee comes face to face with Hector, the man who helped kill Billy. Fueled by vengeance, Lee dodges Hector's relentless attacks, waiting for the perfect moment. With brutal efficiency, he counters, gaining the upper hand and mercilessly finishing him off, bringing justice for Billy. Meanwhile, Barney continues his relentless pursuit of Villain, weaving through the chaos. He tracks Villain to a final room, only to be met with gunfire. Taking cover, Barney waits for a break in the shots. Suddenly, Villain's voice echoes across the space. He's out of bullets. Stepping into the open, Villain taunts Barney, daring him to face him in hand-to-hand combat like a man. Without hesitation, Barney drops his weapons, locking eyes with Villain as they prepare for the final showdown. The fight erupts with ferocity. Barney dominates at first, landing powerful blows, but Villain quickly counters with a devastating kick, momentarily turning the tide. Regaining his footing, Barney slams Villain against the wall, tossing him around the room with unrelenting force. In the struggle, Villain manages to wrap a chain around Barney, hurling him down to a lower level. Seizing the knife that killed Billy, Villain prepares to finish it, but Barney isn't done. Grabbing a loose chain, he launches back into the fight. The two clash with raw intensity, but Barney's fury fuels him. He overwhelms Villain, driving him to the ground and wrapping the chain around his body. In poetic justice, Barney ends Villain the same way Billy was killed. Retribution delivered. The mission is a resounding success. Church acknowledges Barney and his team, offering his thanks and declaring their debt settled. Before parting ways, Barney bids farewell to Maggie. He acknowledges her strength as a fighter, though he teasingly calls her a little immature. Booker, seemingly back in the fold, appears to have joined Church at the CIA. As a gesture of goodwill, Church presents the Expendables with an old biplane to replace the one they lost. Climbing aboard their new plane, the Expendables take to the skies once more, sharing memories of Billy as they fly off into the horizon. Back in France, Sophia finds a box waiting at her doorstep. Inside, she discovers Billy's letter and a significant amount of cash. A final gift from Billy, ensuring she's taken care of even in his absence. The third film kicks off with a high-stakes prison transfer in progress. Barney Ross and his elite team of mercenaries, the Expendables, orchestrate a daring rescue operation. From a helicopter, they secure a metal line between two towers, flying in alongside the speeding train. As enemies retaliate with turret fire, the team uses the line to clear out the guards on the train's roof, creating an opening for Lee Christmas, Toll Road, and Gunnar Jensen to infiltrate. Inside the train, the trio carves through the guards with brutal efficiency, fighting their way to liberate their target, Dr. Death, the team's knife expert and combat medic. Upon his release, Doc wastes no time, dispatching two guards with surgical precision before rushing to the control room. Seizing the controls, he accelerates the train and repurposes the turret, unleashing a storm of gunfire on the prison guards below. As the train hurtles toward the prison, Doc leaps onto the helicopter, rejoining the team just in time. Moments later, the train smashes into the prison, reducing it to rubble, a resounding statement that the Expendables are back. Later, Barney recruits Doc for their next mission, intercepting a shipment of bombs bound for a Somali warlord. Aboard their transport plane, Barney reassures Lee that Doc's skills will prove invaluable. As the team prepares, Barney reveals the mission's true objective: stop notorious arms dealer Victor Min from delivering a cache of deadly thermobaric bombs. With the full crew reunited, including Caesar, the Expendables zero in on the drop point in Somalia. Methodically, they dismantle the guards as they hunt for the leader behind the shipment. But in a shocking twist, Barney discovers the man pulling the strings, Conrad Stonebanks, a rogue former co-founder of the Expendables, long presumed dead. A fierce firefight erupts. Barney and his team decimate Stonebanks' men, but Stonebanks proves just as lethal as ever. In the chaos, he shoots Caesar twice and launches a glide bomb from his helicopter, forcing the Expendables to retreat. Back in the US, the team visits Caesar in the hospital, his condition critical. Barney leaves his signature ring by Caesar's bedside, his frustration palpable as he exits the room. Waiting for him in the hallway is Trench, who advises Barney to step away from this deadly line of work. But Barney refuses to back down. Outside the hospital, Barney encounters CIA operative Max Drummer, the new handler for the Expendables. Drummer informs Barney that their former contact Church is no longer involved. Barney reveals that Church had identified their target as Victor Min, but Drummer calmly corrects him. Victor Min is actually Stonebanks. Unfazed by the revelation, Drummer makes it clear Stonebanks' identity is irrelevant. His sole mission is to capture him and deliver him to the International Criminal Court, where he will face war crimes charges. Overcome with guilt after Caesar's injury, Barney gathers the Expendables for a difficult conversation. With a heavy heart, he tells them that their time has passed. They are relics of a bygone era. Unable to bear the thought of losing any more of them, Barney disbands the team despite their protests, declaring that the Expendables are no more. He walks away, leaving behind the only family he's ever known. Determined to finish the mission without risking his old crew, Barney heads to Las Vegas to meet Bonaparte, a retired mercenary turned recruiter. Bonaparte agrees to help him assemble a younger, tech-savvy team. Together, they scour various locations, meeting potential recruits. First, they encounter Thorne, a brilliant hacker with a knack for breaching security systems, and Luna, a fierce nightclub bouncer from Arizona. In Mexico, they cross paths with Galgo, a sharpshooter eager to join, though his exaggerated credentials lead Barney to turn him down. At Edwards Air Force Base in California, they meet Mars, a heavy weapons specialist with a reputation for destruction. Finally, in Mexico, Barney recruits John Smiley, a former Marine who earns his spot after winning a brutal wrestling match. As Barney finalizes his new crew, CIA operative Drummer surprises him by appearing in his car. Wasting no time, Barney demands Stonebank's location. Drummer reveals Stonebanks is in Bucharest, conducting illegal dealings with an Albanian mobster. Barney has a narrow 36-hour window to capture Stonebanks before he vanishes off the grid. Handing over satellite maps and coordinates, Drummer points Barney toward a local safe house. The following day, tensions rise when the former Expendables confront the new recruits. Mars attempts to ease the situation, reminding everyone it's just a job. But when one of the recruits, June, taunts the older team, calling them has-beens, the confrontation escalates. Lee ends the standoff by hurling a knife at Mars, who narrowly dodges it. Lee smirks and advises him to keep it, a lesson in humility and respect. With the air cleared, Barney and his new crew head out. During the flight, Smiley presses Barney for answers about Stonebanks. After some hesitation, Barney hands over Stonebanks' file, detailing his history and the personal stakes involved. Meanwhile, the original Expendables are left idle, with Caesar still recovering in the hospital. Upon landing, Barney and the recruits set up near the office building where Stonebanks is hiding. They create a diversion to gauge which of Stonebanks' men are armed. Thorne devises a meticulous plan, hacking into the central security grid to bypass motion detectors, biometric scanners, and surveillance systems. With Barney's approval, the team launches their high-risk operation. Under the cover of night, they breach the office building, disabling guards and hacking servers as they advance. Thorne updates Barney on the buyer's imminent arrival while the team continues neutralizing security. Inside, Stonebanks negotiates with the Albanian mobsters Goran and Vata. At Barney's signal, the team storms the room, eliminating everyone involved in the deal. Luna subdues Stonebanks, capturing him alive. As they escort their prisoner out, Stonebanks taunts Barney, reminding him of their shared history. Once brothers in arms and co-founders of the Expendables, their paths diverged, setting the stage for the inevitable reckoning. Stonebanks, once a trusted ally, had turned rogue. Dissatisfied with the Expendables' missions, he sought greater wealth through illicit arms dealing. Now captured, Stonebanks taunts Barney, daring him to pull the trigger. But Stonebanks knows Barney too well, he won't cross that line. Their tense standoff is interrupted as Stonebanks' henchmen descend from a helicopter, launching a grenade at the van. The explosion sends the vehicle careening, violently ejecting the entire team. Despite the chaos, Barney scrambles for his gun, desperate to finish Stonebanks. But before he can take aim, another grenade detonates, hurling Barney off the bridge and into the ravine below. As Stonebanks' thugs prepare to execute the rest of Barney's new recruits, Stonebanks orders them to be kept alive. For now. The next morning, Barney awakens to find Stonebanks' recovery team approaching. In an instant, he overpowers them, taking them down with brutal efficiency. Reuniting with Trench, Barney is shown a video message from Stonebanks. In it, Thorne, Mars, Luna, and Smiley are bound and battered, his hostages. Stonebanks gives Barney a grim ultimatum: 48 hours to rescue his team or watch them die. While planning the rescue, Barney is unexpectedly tracked down by Galgo, who insists on joining the mission. Reluctantly, Barney agrees. But as they prepare to leave, familiar faces appear. Lee Christmas, Toll Road, Doc Death, and Gunner. Refusing to sit this one out, they rejoin Barney, knowing the danger that lies ahead. With no choice, Barney welcomes his old crew back into the fold. Arriving at the site, the Expendables pinpoint Stonebanks' hideout, an abandoned 8-story building. Curiously, there are no visible guards. Treading carefully, they ascend through the floors without encountering resistance, heightening their suspicions. At the top, they locate the captured recruits and swiftly free them. But Stonebanks' voice echoes over the comms. He's been waiting for this moment. The entire building is rigged to explode in 45 seconds, thinking fast. Thorne hacks into the system, jamming the countdown and buying the team an additional 30 minutes. Stonebanks, frustrated by the setback, orders the local militia to launch a full-scale assault. Tanks and attack helicopters converge on the building, while enemy forces swarm from all directions. The Expendables hold the high ground, expertly picking off attackers as they fight to escape the looming detonation. As the battle rages on, Drummer and Trench swoop in with a helicopter, bringing reinforcements, including Yin Yang, another veteran of the Expendables. The team, both old and new, works in perfect sync, cutting down Stonebanks' forces. Drummer zeroes in on Stonebanks' helicopter, shooting it down, while Gunner and Smiley commandeer an enemy tank, using it to obliterate the remaining threats inside the building. Meanwhile, Doc Death and Lee engage in brutal hand-to-hand combat, clearing a path through the enemy soldiers. Spotting an incoming wave of reinforcements, Smiley radios Barney, who immediately alerts Drummer, recognizing the severity of the situation. Drummer lands the helicopter atop the building. ready to evacuate the team as the countdown to detonation ticks dangerously close. Barney orders the team to make a mad dash to the rooftop as the countdown nears 0. The Expendables race toward the waiting chopper, but before Barney can reach safety, Stonebanks intercepts him, shooting him down. Grievously injured, Barney struggles to his feet as Stonebanks looms over him, seizing the moment to issue a final challenge. On the rooftop, Drummer frantically tries to contact Barney, the only one not aboard the helicopter. But there's no response. Stonebanks demands that Barney remove his body armor, wanting him to feel the full extent of his injuries. Despite his wounds, Barney fights back with everything he has, refusing to retreat even as Lee pleads for him to escape. Meanwhile, Smiley shouts a dire warning. Thorne's jamming device is running on just 1% battery. The countdown to detonation creeps dangerously close to 0. Barney and Stonebanks wrestle for control, both scrambling toward their guns. In the critical moment, Barney fires first, dropping Stonebanks with a clean shot. As Stonebanks lies wounded, he taunts Barney one last time, daring him to follow through and deliver him to the International Criminal Court. Barney doesn't hesitate. He finishes Stonebanks with a final, decisive shot. The countdown hits 0 as Thorne's device dies, triggering the building's explosives. Barney sprints toward the rooftop, flames erupting around him as the structure collapses. From the helicopter, the team watches in horror, convinced Barney has been caught in the blast. Smoke and debris fill the sky and the building crumbles into rubble. Just as hope fades, the chopper pulls back to reveal Barney dangling from a rope, having narrowly escaped death once again. Relief washes over the crew as they hoist Barney to safety. With Caesar fully recovered and the threat of Stonebanks gone, a sense of normalcy returns to the team. The 4 young recruits are officially inducted into the Expendables, marking the beginning of a new era. Later, the team gathers to celebrate. Lee and Doc challenge each other to a knife-throwing contest, both striking the bullseye. But Doc's knife slips, granting Lee a smug victory. As the recruits take the stage, Barney watches from the sidelines, unable to hide his pride. Lee smirks, teasing him, calling him a proud, demanding father. The Expendables stand together, united, ready for whatever comes next. The final Expendables film opens in Libya, at one of Gaddafi's old chemical plants. Armed soldiers stand guard outside, waiting for the arrival of a general and his family. The tense atmosphere is shattered when one of the soldiers spots a fallen comrade. And suddenly, an attack helicopter roars into view, tearing through the compound and obliterating anything in its path. As the chaos unfolds, armored trucks roll into the facility, joining the assault. An opposing tank fires a desperate shot, but the chopper swiftly retaliates, reducing the tank to a smoldering wreck. Emerging from the dust and debris is a man named Ramit, who strides toward the tank's wreckage. Finding a dying soldier inside, Ramit calmly asks for the general's location, and after receiving his answer, he finishes the job without hesitation. Meanwhile, one of Ramit's men expertly clears the area, taking down multiple guards with ruthless precision. Using infrared vision, Ramit locates the general inside the building. Disguising himself as one of the enemy soldiers, he easily eliminates the first guard in his path. 2 more fall just as quickly before Ramit hurls a blade at the general, greeting him with cold indifference as the screen cuts away. Back in New Orleans, we reunite with Barney Ross. He arrives at a noisy house, knocking on the door to find Lee Christmas in the middle of an argument with Gina, a fiery new recruit. Gina storms off after some colorful language, leaving Barney and Lee to head to a local bar. Barney's here to reclaim his ring, lost in a bet. However, the security guard standing in his way is none other than Eddie Hall, one of the strongest men in the world. Eddie warns Barney to walk away, but Lee, always ready for a scrap, steps in. Barney points out Jumbo, the man who won the bet. Jumbo refuses to sell the ring back, forcing Barney to play the old man with a bad back card, which only leaves one option. Fighting, Lee makes quick work of Jumbo's crew, effortlessly taking down each adversary. Jumbo, towering over the rest, proves a tougher challenge, until Barney steps in, flipping him through a row of bottles and reclaiming his ring. With the ring secured, it's time to regroup. The team assembles, preparing for the mission ahead. Gunner arrives sporting a new look and the fresh recruits trickle in. The first new face is Easy Day, followed by a CIA operative named Lash. Marsh, a CIA agent working closely with the team, introduces himself with an urgent mission briefing. An arms dealer with a private army, hired by a dangerous figure named Ocelot, is planning to steal detonators for nuclear missiles. Their objective is clear: head to Libya and ensure those detonators never leave the facility. Wasting no time, the Expendables board their plane and take to the skies. During the flight, Lee confides in Barney, admitting to anxiety over the relentless nature of their missions. Barney, ever the hard-nosed leader, laughs it off. Meanwhile, in Libya, the general's son stands at gunpoint, Under pressure, he reveals that the nuclear detonators are in the control room and provides the code to the safe, but his compliance isn't enough. His captors pull the trigger anyway. As the Expendables approach Libya, militants open fire from the ground. Barney maneuvers the plane under heavy fire, deploying countermeasures before managing a rough but successful landing. The team rolls out in their vehicles as Barney immediately takes off to circle above. Inside the facility, Ramit secures the nuclear detonators and prepares to leave. Gunnar lines up a shot from a distance but misses, twice. Frustrated, he adjusts his glasses and fires again, missing once more. Ramit speeds away with the stolen detonators, but the Expendables are in hot pursuit. 4 enemy vehicles separate them, but Lee, Gunnar, and the rest of the crew waste no time engaging. Gunnar finally lines up his shot, taking out one of the enemy vehicles. The remaining convoy splits, prompting the Expendables to do the same. Lee loses his car-mounted gun in the chaos, but doesn't let that slow him down. With precision, he hurls a knife at an enemy turret, disabling it. Pulling up beside the vehicle, Lee leaps onto it, eliminating the driver and taking out the rear gunner before sliding back into his own car. Galan jumps into the driver's seat of the enemy vehicle, seamlessly rejoining the chase. Easy Day guns down another vehicle ahead, but an enemy militant leaps onto his car. It's a fatal mistake. Easy Day swiftly dispatches him. Meanwhile, Toll Road pulls alongside the third vehicle and casually tosses a grenade inside, obliterating it as they speed away from the factory. However, in the chaos, their vehicle flips. Easy Day finishes the job with a clean shot to the opposing driver. Lee finally catches up to Ramit, but his bullets can't penetrate the armored glass of the fleeing vehicle. At the same time, Barney's plane begins to run low on countermeasures. From above, Barney orders Lee to retrieve the detonators, but Lee disobeys, diverting to destroy the enemy missile launcher instead. The decision doesn't save Barney. Ramit, wielding a massive sniper rifle, targets the plane and fires. The shot hits its mark, forcing the aircraft into a downward spiral. As Ramit boards his helicopter and escapes, Barney's plane crashes into the ground in a fiery explosion. Lee and the team rush to the wreckage, searching for any sign of Barney. What they find is grim, a charred, unrecognizable body wearing the Expendables ring. The screen fades to a somber memorial for Barney. Lee is visibly shaken, and Toll Road reminds the crew that their line of work rarely offers happy endings. Agent Marsh approaches Lee, telling him the mission isn't over. But the rest of the team, hardened by loss, turns on Lee, blaming him for disobeying Barney's direct order. They claim Barney's sacrifice was in vain. With no support, Lee silently takes Barney's ring and walks away. Days pass. Lee visits Gina's house, where he learns of a declassified file that might offer a lead on Ocelot, the mastermind behind the operation. The next morning, Lee checks his phone, revealing he placed a tracker inside a blade he had gifted Gina. Meanwhile, Lash, a new recruit, joins the team as they prepare for their next move. Lee heads to Thailand, where he searches for a mysterious man named Decha. Spotting a boat bearing the Expendables logo, Lee approaches a nearby cleaner, asking for Decha. The cleaner denies knowing him. Lee steps onto the boat anyway, prompting the cleaner to attack. The fight halts the moment the cleaner spots Barney's ring. Lee explains his situation, and the cleaner reveals himself as Decha. Back at the CIA black site, the rest of the team gears up. Marsh briefs them. Ramit has hijacked a ship bound for Russia, where a major trade is set to occur. Ocelot is expected to attend. This time, Marsh announces he will personally oversee the mission, citing the mess in Libya as justification. Boarding their plane, the Expendables head to intercept Ramit. Upon arrival, they parachute onto the enemy vessel with pinpoint accuracy. The ship is eerily quiet. Toll Road voices his unease. Something feels wrong. Gina's team breaches the control room, finding it empty. At the same time, Toll's group clears the lower decks, but the silence is deafening. Suddenly, the lights cut out. From the shadows, armed men emerge surrounding both teams. Trapped and locked in a room together, suspicions rise. There's only one explanation: someone among them is a traitor. Tensions rise as the Expendables, locked in a room, play the blame game over who the traitor might be. Before things escalate further, the door swings open. Boach enters, flanked by heavily armed guards. "Who's in charge here?" he growls. Marsh steps forward, claiming leadership, only to be knocked unconscious with a swift smack from Boach. The Expendables' hopes now rest on the one man they once cast aside. Meanwhile, Lee and Decha approach the captured vessel. As Lee gears up for the fight, Decha refuses, explaining that if he starts killing again, he may never be able to stop. Understanding the weight of those words, Lee leaves it be. Barney, however, has no such hesitation. Firing a grappling gun, he ascends to the deck. Upon arrival, Barney notices something is off. There are no signs of battle. He quickly realizes the team has been captured. Before he can act, a guard pulls a gun on him. Barney distracts him just long enough to turn the tables, taking him out quietly. Marsh is dragged to the deck where Romet demands a prisoner exchange. Russo, watching through a video feed, sees no alternative but to accept. As this unfolds, Lee stealthily navigates below deck, moving undetected. Hearing muffled voices, he tracks them to a room packed with guards. Without hesitation, he eliminates them in a brutal flurry of gunfire and blades. Grabbing one of the survivors, Lee forces him to reveal the location of his friends. Romet catches wind that someone is picking off his men and radios for answers. Lee responds coldly, "You made a mistake letting me breathe, but that won't happen again." Lee storms through the ship, killing anyone in his path. Along the way, he spots a nuclear warhead, a grim reminder of the stakes. Pushing forward, he finds himself cornered by enemy reinforcements. Thinking fast, he tosses a flash grenade, commandeers a weaponized motorbike, and unleashes chaos. Zipping through narrow corridors, Lee engages in a high-speed chase, taking down his pursuers one by one. On deck, the action intensifies. He eliminates one final enemy with an explosive finish, setting up a Western-style showdown with the last of Romet's men. In a daring maneuver, Lee uses a nearby jet as a ramp, soaring into the air and eliminating his attacker mid-flight. But the brief victory is short-lived. Heavy gunfire rains down from a war machine, forcing Lee into cover. Tired of the cat-and-mouse game, he steps back into the fight, but the overwhelming number of enemies closes in. Suddenly, Daicha enters the fray, effortlessly cutting down the mercenaries with ruthless efficiency. The two fight side by side, slicing through waves of enemies until the deck is littered with bodies. Below deck, Galan daydreams about the many ways he plans to kill Romet and Boch, his fantasies growing increasingly elaborate. As the team searches for an escape route, they uncover a hidden trapdoor. Galan is the first to dive through without hesitation. Meanwhile, Russo informs Romet that Mr. Bia, the only man who knows Ocelot's true identity, is en route. Elsewhere, Lee and Daicha stumble upon the now empty cell where the expendables had been held. Pressing on, Lee quickly spots a group of guards and wastes no time, taking them out before they can react. The expendables, freed at last, grab weapons from the fallen soldiers, grateful for Lee's return. Lee fills Toll Road in on what he found. The nuke is armed and counting down, with just 27 minutes remaining. Worse, the ship is heading straight for Russia. If the warhead detonates, it could ignite World War III. With no time to spare, they race to find the kill switch. Easy Day triggers a distraction on deck, blaring music to lure the enemy. When the guards approach the source of the noise, bam! The expendables spring the trap, cutting them down in an instant. The expendables step out of the shadows, led by Lee, charging headfirst toward Romet and his forces. Lash, Easy Day, Gunner, Toll Road and Gina follow closely behind, moving with confidence as if nothing could stop them. The enemy doesn't stand a chance. The team tears through the opposition untouched. Lee, growing bored of his assault rifle, switches to his pistol, taking down enemies with effortless precision. Galan makes his way up the stairs, dispatching two guards with ease. Suddenly, Toll Road is stabbed from behind by Boch. Before further damage can be done, Daicha rushes to his aid. The two mercenaries clash in an intense knife duel. Boch proves to be a formidable opponent, but Lash joins in, tipping the scales in their favor. After a brutal fight, Boch falls. Meanwhile, Lee storms the control room, cutting down three mercenaries with his blade. He finally comes face to face with Romet. Without hesitation, the two engage in a vicious duel, trading blows with ferocity. Both fall hard, but Lee wounds Romet, who laughs in defiance. Their battle rages on until Lee delivers the final strike, embedding an axe into Romet's chest. As Romet lies dying, he reveals that he doesn't have the kill switch. Ocelot does. At that moment, a chopper carrying the prisoner exchange lands. Lee notices toothpicks on the ground, a telltale sign of Agent Marsh. The realization hits him hard. Marsh is Ocelot. Before Lee can react, Ocelot kills the prisoner and the pilots, preparing to escape. With just 12 minutes left, Lee takes aim and shoots down the helicopter, sending it plunging into the ocean. Confronting Lee, Ocelot smugly explains that the kill switch could prevent the nuclear explosion, but he has no intention of using it. War is profitable, and Ocelot plans to ensure the expendables take the blame. In a final act of defiance, he tosses the kill switch into the ocean. With no other option, Lee races back to his team, declaring they need a plan. Daicha offers his boat for escape, while Gunner and Easy Day help an injured Toll Road toward the stern. One by one, the crew descends using the grappling line. Lee is the last to remain. As he prepares to cut the line, Gina watches in horror, realizing he plans to sacrifice himself. With just 7 minutes left, Lee returns to the control room. He drops the anchor, slams the ship into full throttle, and turns the helm hard. The ship veers off course, pulling away from Russian waters. Enemy mercenaries swarm the bridge. Lee fights back, but as bullets fly and his ammo runs dry, he braces for the inevitable. Barricading the door, he prepares to make his last stand. Suddenly, the sound of explosions echoes outside. Lee opens the door to find Marsh, but before they can clash, a chopper gunship rains fire on the deck. Lee looks up, stunned. Behind the controls is Barney Ross. Marsh falls, shredded by the gunfire. Lee jumps aboard the chopper and Barney wastes no time, launching missiles at the ship. The vessel erupts in a massive explosion just seconds before detonation. As the chopper pulls away, Lee swears at Barney, only for the shockwave to hurl them kilometers across the water in spectacular fashion. Later, the team gathers, relieved to see both Lee and Barney alive. Barney explains his deception. He faked his death by putting Jumbo in his place, using the confusion to declassify files and force Ocelot into the open. With the mission complete and Ocelot defeated, the Expendables celebrate together, ready for whatever adventure lies ahead. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.